Behind every amazing flavor is an amazing human who has perfected their craft. Welcome to Flavors Unknown, a behind-the-scenes look at new flavors and the chefs, pastry chefs, and bartenders who create them, with your host, Emmanuel.
Hey there. In the past years, I had the opportunity to meet several times with my new guest and to eat at multiple occasions at his restaurant, Cockscomb in San Francisco. He has written 2 cookbooks, Beginnings and Awful Good. You have probably now realized that my guest this week is chef, restaurateur, and author Chris Cosentino. I am your host, Emmanuel Roche, and you are listening to episode 46 of my podcast, Flavors Unknown. I have been in the food industry for more than 20 years, both in Europe and in the US. And every other week, I interview trending chefs, pastry chefs, and bartenders across the country. If you are new to the show, my guest last week was baker Matthew Cabon from Magnol Baking in Houston. In today's episode, we talk about Chef Cosentino 4 restaurants, Cockscomb in San Francisco, Acacia House in Nappa Valley, Jackrabbit in Portland, and Rosalie in Houston. And we have a big discussion about the importance of local history for Chris Cosentino in his menu creation. Welcome to the show, Chef Chris Cosentino. I'm very pleased to have you on Flavors Unknown.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And as to say, welcome to another fellow podcaster. How is your podcast going?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
I don't do everything to measure success. Too many people are worried about how many people listen to me, how many people give a shit what I have to say. It's a means to get other people's message out. And that's it. I don't know how to see how many people listen to it. All I know is I do it. I talk to people that I like that are cool. And, that's it. I think there's too many people who are trying to monetize and, pontificate and, pat themselves on the back with, I've got so many, I could really care less. To me, it's really about the people that I'm talking with that are, doing cool things and whatever. If somebody wants to listen, they listen. If they don't want to listen, they don't have to listen.
Yeah. I join you there. I mean, that's the same. What I wanted to do is I'm passionate about the world of, chef and restaurants. And I just wanted to give a platform for them to, to share their experience and what they have done. And that could be useful for other chefs in industry.
Well, at the rate we're going, who knows what's going to be left of this business? So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how are you doing personally at the moment?
We're fine. I mean, everybody's doing what we're supposed to be, which is, stay away from people. All my restaurants are closed. I'm just doing cooking videos in the kitchen, and my son's doing school, and my wife's managing Frontline Foods, which is orchestrating all the chefs in the Bay Area to get foods to hospital workers.
Yeah, I've seen that you and some of your team like you have been serving food for the hospitals, correct? Like in the past weeks.
I only did once. I did the first delivery, and then others are doing it, not me. Once we closed the restaurant, I've stopped doing everything.
So you have your restaurant in 4 different areas. So do you have an idea how it's going to to happen on the reopening, because they have different states? So obviously probably different guidelines. So any thoughts about what's going to happen?
We're waiting on laws and CDC regs and safety protocols, just like everybody else is. So what I'm focused on right now is figuring out smart menus for each properties that are manageable with minimal staff. When you have restaurants that some states only allow 25% of the occupancy, some may allow 50%. So it really is going to change the dynamic.
And are you going to pivot a part of the business into like other restaurants have done with takeout and delivery? What's your take on that?
We'll be doing some to-go components, takeaway, but I'm just trying to decide what those components will be.
Do you think that this is something that is going to last for a certain time, like this idea of having the two aspects of the business, dining rooms and then the takeout and delivery. This is something you think that or your customers wants to continue from a behavior standpoint when things are going to gradually go back to whatever the new norm is going to be?
I have no idea. I mean, if I had a crystal ball and I could answer that question, I'd be a very wealthy man.
No, I understand that, but maybe this is some of the discussion that you know, or things that comes to to your mind when you are thinking about the reopening and what's next.
I mean, nobody knows. I mean, this is the big issue. Like every 5 minutes, something changes. So there is no sound answer. I mean, I could say something today and it could be different in 30 minutes because something new comes out about COVID or there's a change of protocols. And I don't want to say something I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I think that the restaurant industry as a whole will change. Hospitality as a whole will change. For starters, you're not going to see people smiling anymore because they're going to be wearing masks on their face. So, there's one basic thing that we kind of take for granted. So what is going to happen? Who knows? Do we have to reinvent ourselves and rethink the concept of what hospitality is? Yes.
Are you part of a group of peers and so on that is trying to think about what's next and what's the future of the hospitality?
There's a group of chefs that in restaurant tours. It's just like hospitality folks just talking and about what's going to happen. But there's a million of those. There's a different group in every city, and everybody's talking. But then none of those groups are talking. I don't know. It's just all. We're all saying the same thing. We're all doing the same thing, which is nobody knows anything. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And then somebody opens too early, then everybody gets sick, and we're all going to be back where we were a month ago. So there is no sound answer. So it's just. The questions are, they're mute at this point because there's no solid answers for anything.
So let's talk a bit about so you have 4 concepts, correct? So you have Cockscomb in San Francisco, Jackrabbit in Portland, Acacia House in Nappa Valley, and Rosalie in Houston. So can you tell us a little bit about the type of food and that you have, at each of those concepts?
Each one is, extremely different, but they're based on, everything is kind of its own historical aspect. So for instance, Cockscomb is based on the gold rush and the influx of a large concentration of immigrants from all over the globe, bringing their food and their culinary history with them to the Bay Area, which is what makes Cockscomb very interesting and unique because it's really about San Francisco cuisine. And there really isn't any other place like that. So when you have Portuguese, French, Italian, Spanish, English, Chinese, Mexican, all of which came for one very simple thing, which was gold, they brought with them their cuisine and culture. And that's why there's so many dishes that were created here in San Francisco. People don't think about those things. It's very taken for granted. The history of San Francisco is extremely powerful and rich. And to me, that's what makes, the city really, really amazing. And then Acacia House is based all on the origins of grapes, which I like to call the immigration of grapes from foreign countries to the US, to the Valley. So all those grape varietals are from other countries, of course. And so the cuisine or the food that's there at Acacia House is based off that. So you have Portuguese, French, Spanish, Italian, and German. Those were all the wine grapes that were brought to the Valley, and that's what defines the food there. So it's a lot more approachable for the guest when they're purchasing a pairing, whether it be, they're having an Italian dish and they want to pair something with an Italian wine, but it kind of goes, it allows people to really dive through and dig into not only the food, but also all the different wine varietals throughout the Valley. Then you have Jackrabbit, which, everybody knows that Portland was Mr. Beard's home, James Beard to be specific. And it's really, when you look at Portland, it was, a lot of people don't even know that a lot of the history of Portland, but, the name of Portland is actually from Portland, Maine. There was a coin toss that was done And if the coin had landed on the other side, it would have been called Boston, Oregon. So, a lot of people moved there for lumbering, and that was the big industry there. You had the river that was able to move the lumber through, and it was just a very interesting time there. So the food there is very similar to Cockscomb in a lot of ways because you had a lot of the culture and immigration and such moving up there. But the food is very artisanal, very farm, and it's all about like what's right there at the moment. And then you have Rosalie, which is in Houston, which is inside the C. Baldwin Hotel, downtown Houston, which is Rosalie was my great grandmother who immigrated from Italy. So the food there is an American Italian. It's like what my childhood was for food. So it's quite fun. All very different.
Yeah, but they're all different, but they all have something in common, which is, I mean, for you, it seems to be very important, is this history and culinary heritage, based on the history of like those different places or even your family when it comes to, Rosalie. And that so is something very important for you as your source of inspiration.
You can't create future unless you understand history, right? Everything's been done before you, everything, and the only thing that hasn't been done is, nobody's walked on Mars yet. That'll happen, but we walked on the moon. So, well, it depends on who you talk to. Because some people say it's a hoax,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
But, it's really, to me, there has to be sound grounding. And if there's not a grounding in history, then it just doesn't make sense. And it's also easier to draw from history than it is to just make shit up.
So let's talk a little bit about your, we're talking about source of inspiration and creativity. So what's your creative approach? How do you start when you're thinking about creating like a new dish, on the menu, or you are putting like a menu together, like for a new restaurant, for instance?
I don't really have a process.
Okay.
I don't have a lab. I don't have a separate lab kitchen or create kitchen. I go to the farmer's market and I taste things.
Okay. So it started with the produce for you.
I don't know. I don't think I'm probably not the best person when it comes to things like that. Like I don't take myself so seriously. And two, I don't like overthink everything and try to like spout off fancy words to make myself sound any fancier. I mean, ultimately everything I do is based off something historical, and I try to cook with what's in season. And I mean, that's it. Like there's no bells and whistles behind me. There's no like, fava beans are great right now, so I'm going to do something with fava beans.
Let's say that you have fava beans, as an example, but then, and you can have fava beans, in Portland, and you can have fava beans, in San Francisco and others in Houston, but of your restaurants,
you can't.
You can't. What do you mean by that?
Portland's 2 months behind. Houston's 3 months ahead.
Correct, but you will have at one moment, fava beans that are going to be available in the right season, and so, but how are you going to cook and develop something which is already becoming different, correct? If it goes on the menu in Rosalie compared to the one in Jackrabbit or the one in, in Cockscomb. I don't want to do an intellectual exercise. I'm just like curious to understand how you approach that. I understand your first step is the produce and something that you find that you want to celebrate. But depending of what's the, like the concept of your restaurant, it's going to be obviously treated differently, right?
Well, yeah, then it just goes back to based off history. So like you look at a dish. So if it's at Rosalie, it would just be fava beans that could be put with a bruschetta or, smashed with ricotta, very simple. And then if you look at something at Acacia House, it would be much more refined, and you would pick a culture, whether it would be Italian, French, or Portuguese. Maybe if it goes down the French vein, it would be, something as simple as, a fava beans with, a piece of fish, or it's a salad. I do fava beans with strawberries as a salad. So, I mean, it just depends. Like a lot of times I just have to stand in the room and play and taste and I literally do it in the space that I'm at.
But what is the most important for you in the balance of a dish? When you think about the main taste of like sweet, salty, acid, bitter, umami, and even if you talk to others, smoky, even they put in a balance of taste. If when you have to balance a dish, what is the key element for you?
I think food needs to be round on the palate. If it's too much of one more than the other, then it falls flat. So you have to encompass all of those things so it's round on your palate. So it's all of those items. There is no one that's better than the other. You have to really look at it from a bigger perspective and balance all those flavors intelligently, like all those nuances, to create something that sings on the palate. Otherwise, it's just either too much umami, which some people may disagree with, but I think there can be too much, and it could be too salty, it could be too sour, it could be too bitter. So if you don't figure out that balance and make it round on the palate, that's when it hums. And if it doesn't hum, it doesn't work, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at this aspect of like creativity and technique, what is the most important for you? What's you think that creativity is more important than techniques, or it has to go hand in hand?
I mean, we're tradespeople. I mean, that's so it's ultimately everything's based on technique, but I think that depends on, you can't just wing pasta. There's a technique to it, right? There's a technique to making the dough and letting it rest, then rolling it out, and then how it's cooked. There's a technique, whether it's making of the base product or finishing a final dish. I think sometimes creativity gets in the way of a lot of people because that's when you end up with white chocolate and sardines. So I don't think that that's always a relevant thing when people are thinking too off left field. Just sometimes people just want to be creative so people pay attention to them. I think when you get so creative that you're so overly thinking it, you forget about your customer and your guest. And your guest, you're ultimately there to nourish someone and give someone a wonderful experience and a taste memory. And sometimes learning restraint and holding back with your creativity or whatever you choose to call it is more beneficial than anything, because too many people, I think, go hog wild and put too much shit on the plate, and they miss the point of what it's all about, which is you're there to make a guest happy. If your technique is sound and the product is great, then a guest has a good experience. Then you're walking away with something great. Yet there are people who will say that's being lazy and there's not enough work being done. So it's a catch-22. It's like whatever the individual feels like, like I'm not going to knock Ferran Adria because he's a genius. And I think there was a lot of planning and a lot of thought, and that took, 3/4 of a year to be ready for the season. And that's different than a restaurant that's every day where people walk in and they're expecting to feel welcomed and nourished. And, it's a different style of dining. There is no right or wrong answer. Everybody's got their own way to get from point A to point B. It's just a different style, and I choose a different way. Some people say rustic is sloppy. I disagree.
Do you think as well it might evolve with age and experience? And sometimes we see like younger chef that want to be creative just to put their name out there in the world, and then in fact it is with experience and the fact that suddenly they understand that it's about like simplicity and let the produce shine. It's part of the evolution of a chef experience.
I'd like to hope it is, but ignorance is also bliss, and some people get in their own way. Right?
We see that a lot at the moment. Yes.
I think it's a catch-22. I mean, I think you have people that create themselves to be something, right? And people brand them as something, and then it ends up being a situation where, they figure out that that's not what they want to do. I mean, there's some really incredible restaurants that are doing very simple, beautiful food, and it does have a lot of technique involved with it. It requires patience. And I think that's one of the biggest difficulties with people is patience is gone because everybody's so hooked up to their phones and their computers and what's next. And people view restaurants like they look on Tinder. They go from thing to thing, like next, next. I've been there, I've been there, I've been there. And that's the way people's minds work now. And they're not patient and thoughtful and think it through multiple times because it's about hurry, 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 hurry. I got to be the first to get it done, the first to get it out, the first one to do this. And I think that becomes a detriment because there's something to be said for slowing down, paying attention, looking at, okay, what is this? I've never seen this before. How do you use this? Why do you use it this way? How long have you been growing it like this? Is there another process? Is there something else you want to share with me? Sometimes just people get in their own way because they're trying to get someplace. And we have to stop and remember we're there to make people happy. And we get in and if you let your ego get in your own way, you'll lose. You know, we've set up a system where everybody feels that awards are what the goal is, and it's actually not. Awards, if that's what you need in life is a pat on the back and cooking and your goal of cooking is to get the awards, then you should have gone to be a competitive athlete or something else. Like it's not about just awards. It's about, to me, a reward is seeing the guests come back over and over again because they have a good time. Like that's the award.
But it seems to be nowadays, as you're saying, with technology, that almost there's like different path when you are in the culinary world and chef. I'm not saying that not owning a restaurant, but being a chef, and because it seems that instant gratification, and if you want to be in the media, on the media, and being like known, it seems that it is feasible. That even if you don't have the background, if you don't have like the educations and so on, but the reality is today that you have that type of individuals, and you have as well the others that you are talking about, the one that are owning restaurants and that I need to have the skills. And I see a lot of this going on at the moment. And when you're looking at like the young generation of chefs that are coming out of cooking school, they see this instant gratification, and it seems that for me it's a lie. And I don't know what you think about that.
Well, when you're in culinary school, you're promised a sous chef job when you get out of school. You're promised to make a certain amount of money, but they don't. They're now teaching kids how to be on TV at culinary school. When I went to culinary school, it was about cooking, and I did okay. I mean, I was not a great. I mean, I've always been a poor student. I'm dyslexic. I have ADD, but I think that there's something to be said for like really wanting to love your craft. Like it's really cool. Like I learn something new every day. I'm forever learning, forever trying new things. And I don't think that if you the moment somebody says I know everything is the moment they should quit, because they don't know shit. You don't know everything. You'll never know everything. There's a million techniques out there. There's a million ways. And ultimately, we're just riding on the backs of like thousands of grandmas before us. That's just own that. Just admit it and be okay with that. There are thousands of French grandmas who have cooked before me that will cook French food better than I ever will. There are thousands of Spanish grandmas who've done the same thing, and Italian grandmas and American grandmas. It's just like we have to like remember that the basis of most kitchens was women until restaurants. I just think we have to educate in a new way. We have to train in a different way than I was trained. And we have to excite the next generation to want to love this craft, to want to love the hard work, to want to love the tediousness and the repetitive motions that they may find boring now.
When you say that they need to be taught in different way that you wear, so what do you mean by that, and what do you think needs to be done?
I mean, I don't know. I'm trying every day. Like, it's just different. The world's different. We have to change. I mean, I don't scream and yell. I don't, those are different times. It's all very different. Like, how do you get someone to be excited to do the same task over and over again when they still can't get it right. And then they expect to go learn the new thing when they still haven't learned the old thing. So how do you get somebody to want to say, hey man, I want to make that omelet again. Can I make that omelet again? How do you get somebody to crave doing something until it's like they're so stoked that it's beautiful? They're like, I want to make it like that every time. How do I do that? So how do you get somebody to want to do that? So something so simple like, as simple as making an omelet. Like that, it sounds trivial, but it's not. Like, how do you make the perfect scrambled eggs that are fluffy and light and delicate and not dry? There's no dish that isn't worth time and energy. If you're going to make a burger, make the best burger you can. If you're going to make a grilled cheese, make it the best grilled cheese. But there's the ho-hum aspect of it, and like this is boring, and I think that becomes frustrating, as for me at least, when chefs are working and you hear somebody say, "Oh man, I'm so tired of making this dish. I don't want to make it anymore." Yeah, but there are restaurants that have been around forever, like Bocuse. They make the same dishes all the time. It never stops. And people want to stand in line to work there because it's Bocuse. But what's the difference? Like, why don't you want to learn to make something like Bocuse does it? It's been, there's something to be said for that.
But how do you keep then those individuals motivated then? This new generation that seems, that get bored very easily.
I don't know. If I had that answer, life would be a lot easier.
I talked with you several times and so on, and I know that mentorship is something important. I know that you're looking back at your career, that you had, mentor that meant a lot to you. So how do you carry this and transfer that to the next generation? Because mentorship is a key element in your craft.
I think it's an extremely key element, but you also have to have people that want to stay. As soon as a lot of people get to a point where they're getting molded is when, people leave because they want to be the chef somewhere. And I think that it's a really hard to mentor people that always want to be the boss.
Maybe with the current situation, that is going to change because it's not going to be that easy to open your own business and open like another restaurant. So
it's an interesting time. I mean, I feel very fortunate that I have a bunch of staff who have gone through me and worked with me in the past that now own their own businesses and they're doing well and they're chefs of restaurants. And, one of them's opening a restaurant, in Nashville, and one of them's running the Houston property. And, I've got one here in San Francisco, 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them in San Francisco. And,
wow.
It's just a different thing. I mean, there's no simple answer. It's all on the individual. I think we can do everything we can. We can stick our hand out. It's kind of like saying lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. It's the same thing with the individuals. You can lead them to it, but if they don't want to take the knowledge and they don't want to take the information, you can't force it on them because they have their own agendas.
So I want to come back to something that you said before that I thought was interesting. I mean, and I know what you said it because you were talking about techniques with like those, very specific restaurants and so on. And then you opposed that. You said that I'm doing very authentic, very rustic style of cooking. But don't you think that in the rustic aspects of, of what you're doing, when it comes to offal or when it comes to salumi and so on, there's quite a lot of technique, as well involved there that you need to master in order to, to be able to serve that type of product the way they should be?
I mean, salumi is about mastering patience first. That's number one. If you can't master patience, then you will never be able to produce proper salami. I think that's the most important thing to understand because it takes time, right? It boils down to mathematics, right? Technique. The number one thing is mathematics. Then comes the technique.
Can you tell me why you say mathematics for this?
Well, everything's done in percentages. So you have a percentage of weight of meat to salt, and then meat to spice, and then meat to fat. And then, there's fermentation times and temps and ratios. And if you don't get those right, you make rotten things and you throw it away. That's simple. You're also looking for percentage of weight loss in product before it's servable. You're looking at water activity percentages before it's servable. So mathematics are key. And that, I think, is like one of the most underrated things when it comes to, yes, it's time and it's salt and it's great meat and it's love. But if you can't do the math right, then don't bother. You're just going to throw away a lot of product, because if you can't do, let's just say 2% of your meat weight in salt, I'll just use that as an example, and you screw up the math and you undersalt it, then your meat's going to spoil. If you oversalt it, then your meat's going to be too salty. So you really have to focus. And that's it sounds ridiculous, but it's such a simple thing. It's not something that's done by eye. It's not a guess, and I think, then you have to understand the process of how things work and, what is fermentation. And I mean, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle to get to the final end means. There's a lot, but I think math is the one is the biggest when it comes to salumi. That is the biggest part of the technique. Then you're learning how to stuff and how to tie and how to dry and how to age and how to rotate products on the, in the hanging shelf. So there's that. And then, when you look at cooking with meat, it's like certain cuts of meat when making, there's a salumi that's just made with like bloodline meat, so there's like all this historical stuff involved with it too. So there's all these different things to like learn from it, again, it's like math, history, technique, time, and patience. And that's the scary part. That's the big scary part, is the time and the patience. Because you make it and your math may be right, but say you had a spike in humidity and a temperature rise, and then all of a sudden you killed all your good bacteria, then your product's bad. There's so many variables. It's so screwy.
And the same thing with offal, correct? Because, that could turn bad very quickly as well. And then you cannot, use those products at all.
Well, those are very different in that, you're not working with trying to age them. You get them fresh and you process and then you serve. But I mean, cooking organ meats is a whole other world. That is really truly cucina povera, which is the cuisine of the poor. You look at all the different cultures that have cooked those cuts of meat for how many generations. Some things are about making them tender. Some things are about extracting a bitter note to them that you want to remove from it, or a smell that you need to get out of it. It's like there's a million things about different organs that have to be worked with in different ways to get a final end means that people will enjoy.
Every time I have a chef on the show, I ask them, I pick their brain a little bit and talk to them about maybe to share a recipe for the home cooks that are listening and that they could prepare, at home. So I don't know, are you okay if we take maybe like a pasta dish? And why would you suggest to make as a Chef Cosentino style with a unique spin?
To me, when people are cooking at home, unless they're baking, recipes are a guideline. Not everybody has the same ingredients that restaurants have. Everybody has different markets and different seasons, and it's really about adapting to what's available in their moment and in their place. The other day, I did what I called the CSA bottom of the box challenge. I had a few things left over in the bottom of my CSA box, and I had to figure out what to do with them because I didn't want to, waste the product. And it's really about learning to think on your feet and know what flavors work together. So, something very simple is as people think of broccoli as like this green tree that you get a giant wedge of it on a plate at like a steakhouse. But there's so many varieties of broccoli that, there's broccoli de chicho, there's broccolini, there's broccoli rapini, there's sweet broccoli. Then you have all these broccolis. There's arugula rabe, which is a broccoli. You have all these like sprouting broccolis, purple sprouting broccoli. So I think, it's such a simple thing as taking a penne pasta, and in the pan, you just take, like if you have very basic things, you need garlic, you need olive oil, you need chili flakes, lemon zest, lemon juice, and you can use broccoli, but you chop it, you peel the stems and you chop it up, and you start by cooking the broccoli stems, and then you feed in the garlic, and then you feed in, into the, and then you start adding your pasta to it. Once you add your pasta, then you add pasta water, then you add olive oil, then you add the broccoli tops, which are the soft, tender bits that cook really quickly. So it's really about like understanding the product. Then it boils down to timing and being prepared in advance and having all the stuff cut properly. And so, I try to do the best I can with giving people recipes. Most people don't follow them. Let's be honest. You know it, and I know it.
Yeah, true. That's true. I know there's some people, the one that are really passionate about their cooking, they do it. They look at it as kind of a guideline. There's some people that follow the recipe almost like line by line because they don't have the guts and they don't want to try and they are afraid. They're afraid they are going to burn something, I guess. I'd rather have, things like guideline, and I have a lot of cookbooks and at the moment I have, some time to cook with them, but it's the guideline, it's inspiration. It's like, and it's about why can I find, you're absolutely correct, because at the moment, I cannot find like everything.
And I think that's the thing. And it's, if you can't find broccoli to do, a classic pasta in Italy would be orecchiette, which is translation of orecchiette is pig's ears. And, to do orecchiette with sausage and broccoli rabe and chili and garlic, like that's a classic. So if you don't have the sausage, you can do the same pasta, omit the sausage and use just the broccoli and the garlic and the chili. So I think that's how I try to look at things for people. And it's like, I make pestos at the restaurant, but I don't put nuts or cheese in them. That allows me to serve the same dish to a larger audience. I finish the dish with cheese and pine nuts, or cheese and walnuts, or cheese and almonds. But if the person is allergic to dairy,
sure,
or nuts, then I can omit one or the other, but the flavors are still there. So it's really learning to adapt to your guests' needs and making your guests happy, because you know what? You're there to make them happy. We've chosen a career where we ultimately, it's basically like we've signed an oath to take care of people. Just that's the hospitality business. We're to take care of people. We've signed an oath to make people happy. Think about it. You go to work and you make people happy. It's not like you go to work and say, sit in the chair, I'm pulling your teeth out, or, hey, by the way, you owe $30,000 in taxes this year, or I'm here to tell you that, your son is failing algebra. It's not.
Yeah, sometimes you have to deal with not very, very easy customer too. There's always someone that has like a bad temper. Someone has freaking knows everything. Someone is a food critic, or whatever. Do you have those too?
Yeah, we do, but we're still ultimately making people happy. And one of the things we have to recognize is we're never going to make everybody happy. Not everybody's going to love my restaurant. Not everybody's going to love somebody else's restaurant. There's a time and place for everybody and everything. But if you can remember the reason why we got in this business is to make people happy and to be hospitable and convivial, then you have more of a chance of success than if you try to tell everybody that it's my way or the highway.
And, not to come back to the beginning of our conversation, but you will have all of you guys to try to find a way how to keep that, but with the whole new guidelines and rules and whatever, and maybe people not being able to come to your dining room, and, that's going to be a freaking challenge.
I think that old saying, scarcity creates demand, but also at the same time, fear is more powerful than anything. And right now, people are fearful. As much as they're craving going out to eat or doing things, there's a fear of the unknown. We can't see this. And somebody tried to compare it the other day. They were like, this is just like 9/11. No, it's not. This is not a visual enemy, in somebody's mind where they can go, I can see who did this. This is the problem. No, we don't have that, because nobody's walking down the street with a scarlet letter on them, letter C, that says, I have COVID. You don't know. So people are afraid of what they don't see. They're in fear of what they can't understand. And I think there's a lot of people who don't believe it's true. And for all you know, that they're a carrier and they might get ill. So it's a very different time. This is a perfect example to look at history. We had the Spanish flu. When the Spanish flu came out the first time, it wasn't as bad as when it came back the second time. So is history going to repeat itself? Quite possibly. Do we understand everybody's pushing in the right direction. Everybody's trying to do the right things, but it's hard to not know when you don't know. And it becomes very frustrating when you're in a business, in an industry where, as the chef, you always have to have the answer, right? We always have to have a solution.
As you said, rightfully so, fear is the main emotion at the moment throughout, like the world. And I mean, the US, obviously. And people need comfort. And, that's one of the great things about food is that it brings comfort to people. Everything that you have been talking about, and all this grounded, rustic, comfort food and so on, is people that are craving, that type, of food at the moment. So
are they craving that? Because they've been cooking it at home for so much, they probably don't want it anymore.
No, but yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, the food that is done and the comfort food done by, Chef Chris Cosentino is not the same food that I am making, at home. So there's this willingness at the moment from the consumer that want to have the possibility to, to be able to have like food at home that is chef inspired or that is created by chefs. And so I'm sure there's going to be some opportunities, for you guys. Different style, different way. I don't know what it is, but
I truly believe the number one thing that everybody wants right now is to not have to wash their own dishes. That's the number one thing everybody wants. 100%. They're tired of washing their own dishes because they're at home, they're eating 3 square meals a day in their house, and they're flooded with dishes. And they're tired of it. I hear it all the time. I'm not kidding. I mean, it sounds silly.
They would have to have some convenience here as well. Yeah, true.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do the connection with, cycling and then the chef cycle and No Kids Hungry, because I think it's going to be even more a need, because with the coronavirus pandemic, it's creating a hunger crisis. And, I think
sure.
I read that's more than 17% of young kids now in the United States that lack sufficient food, and it's going to get worse with the rise of unemployment. And, and of course, a lot of them got access to food through like the school, meal program. So
yeah.
What's going on? Can you talk to us a little bit about this, the chef cycle and for No Kids Hungry?
When Chef Cycle started, it was 1 in 5 kids that went to public school went to school hungry. Okay? And that was 5 years ago. So in 5 years, that number went from 1 in 5 to 1 in 7 children that went to school hungry. And that's a huge improvement.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right now, we're at 1 in 4 kids.
Oh, gosh.
So we've gone down. We're gone lower than we were prior. to Chef Cycle. So what Chef Cycle is an offshoot of No Kid Hungry, where a group of chefs on a dare wanted to ride their bike 100 miles each day for 3 days. They rode from New York to DC to raise funds for No Kid Hungry. That event turned into riding down the coast of California. That was the second year. And then it lived in Santa Rosa for 3 years. The group has grown amazingly well. I mean, it started with 5 people, and now we're up to like 350 riders. So,
Oh, wow.
and it's the hospitality industry as a whole. You know, the goal is to ride 100 miles each day, 3 days in a row. And the funds, for every dollar we can raise, it can feed 10 kids, a whole meal, whole grain, and a whole fruit. And to me, that's a really powerful thing. You know, I'm never going to cure cancer. Neither are you. But
True.
if we give one of these kids a chance, maybe they will. And by giving them the basic nutrition, and it's sad that I have to say it like that, giving somebody basic nutrition, that's pathetic. That even comes out of my mouth. Giving somebody food gives them the ability to focus. Because when these kids are going to school, they're in a situation or a state as an athlete we call a bonk. And when you bonk, it means that your body's completely run out of nutrients. So what happens is when you bonk, your muscles go first, but then your brain fights with your muscles for carbohydrates. And if your brain doesn't have the carbohydrates, it makes you act funny and do dumb things like yell or act out or do things you're not supposed to, which prevents the learning process, not only for yourself, but for others in your class. So by providing these kids so it's basically like, let's just say you ran a marathon and you go to school after the marathon and expected to take a test. That's what it's like for these kids every day.
Life day to day. Yeah, exactly.
So that to me is not okay. That's not right. And to see the ability to correct that by just riding ourselves into the ground on a bicycle, you know, I'm okay with suffering. I'm pretty good at it. I like to hurt myself, you know, by riding my bike for hours on end. I'll do it, you know, and if that's what it takes, you know, and there's a ton of other chefs out there doing the same thing. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of chefs who've changed their lifestyle, changed the way that they take care of themselves. You know, a lot of chefs have lost a lot of weight since they've started doing this. It's a whole new world. You know, it's an amazing, amazing program, and feel pretty lucky to be a part of it.
So have you done it in 2020? I haven't seen, or it's, you know, with the situation, it's going to be impossible to do the ride.
Well, it's canceled.
It's canceled, yeah.
We were supposed to be up in Bend, Oregon in June.
Okay.
As of now, last I heard, we're canceled. Maybe something will come in the fall, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't make those decisions. I'm just a peon in the situation. I just ride my bike.
Sure. Yeah. And talk about it. Yeah, which is important. Okay, Chef. I want to finish the interview. I just want to give your freedom back with series of rapid fire questions. So,
okay,
top 3 cookbooks that have most influenced you.
Oof, God, that's tough. I mean, I have a library of cookbooks. It's about 3,000 cookbooks downstairs in my house. So that's kind of hard to say there's one.
You cannot find 3. I'm giving you 3, not 1, 3.
Oh, you just said the 3 most influential books in your life.
Yes.
That's really not an easy choice.
The top 3, yes.
You know, I think Jacques Pepin's La Technique and La Méthode were extremely important for me, being dyslexic. The photos and step-by-step instructions really allowed me to understand what was really going on in cooking school, because at cooking school, they were giving me books without any, and I hate to say it, with no pictures, but when you're dyslexic, it didn't make sense. I was getting it all wrong. So to have a picture to go alongside with what was being said made a lot more sense for me. And I really picked it up quite quickly after that. Harold McGee's on food and cooking is extremely important. I think I wouldn't call that a cookbook. I would call that a book about the understanding and the science of why things do what they do in cooking. Really made a lot of sense and it really changed my perspective on things. Those were some really big ones. And then I think as a young man, I'm trying to think cookbook, I mean, there's so many, God, I have so many books downstairs. Thinking about them all, I'm constantly getting new books. I have some in languages I have to use Google Translate with my phone. And the picture to translate what's going on.
Or maybe maybe one of the last one that you you read or you went the flip through.
There's a couple that have just come out that are really fun, but I think St. John, 25 years of St. John, just is really for me. Fergus's first book was always nose to tail eating was the really huge one for me.
Yeah.
But the 25-year anniversary of St. John is really, really powerful. That's it tells a really big story about how that restaurant came to be and Fergus and Trevor's relationship and with food and having lunch and just really makes you appreciate things a little bit more.
Okay. What's your favorite guilty pleasure food? I like that.
Swedish fish, maybe, I guess. I don't know.
Swedish fish. That's interesting. I never had that one.
You've never had gummy? You've never had gummy fish?
No. I never had anyone saying that answer.
What do you got? People saying what? Oh, like a greasy hamburger. Everybody's got
you know what? I had a lot of Taco Bell, and which really was very interesting to me. Hearing chefs and so on talking about some of the Taco Bell. Yeah, so that was interesting. But
I haven't had a soda in
It was not a soda. It was. No,
I know.
It
but
was
just
food, but yeah.
In general, I haven't eaten at Taco Bell or McDonald's or Burger King in 15, 20 years.
Huh. What's your biggest pet peeves in the kitchen?
My biggest pet peeve is when somebody breaks something and won't admit it.
They still do that? Wow. Okay.
Who broke the blender? Not me. Well, not me seems to be here a lot lately. Can you introduce? I'd like to meet this person, not me. It sounds like a really shitty person that needs to own up to all his crimes of breaking the blender or, breaking the cryovac machine or, it's who broke this? Not me. Well, can you go find not me for me? Because we're going to have a conversation. If somebody just admitted to something going wrong, when we can repair it in a timely manner, instead of breaking it and hiding it, and then when you really need it, you don't have it, it's really, really infuriating.
Give me 3 dishes that you cannot live without cooking or eating.
I don't know.
Oh, come on, chef.
Cooking
I'm sure
eating.
Cooking or eating.
I always cook pasta at the house.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for just a proper roasted chicken. That's always, to me, is something pretty, not everybody gets that. No, a roasted chicken, a proper roasted chicken.
Okay.
Not everybody gets that anymore. I don't know. I just just a simple arugula salad. There's something to be said for a perfectly balanced salad with the right amount of acidity.
Okay.
I'm not a big,
So how do you bring the acidity? Vinegar, lemon? What are you using?
I blend. I do red wine, vinegar, and lemon juice.
Okay.
Mixed together to give it a balance. But I like it to be a little, I'm a firm believer in salad after still. I like that. I like that. But not a lot of people understand that. They all think you're a ding dong when you do that.
The salad after what?
After your dinner.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because for me being French background, we always serve the salad as well, a separate after the dish, usually before the cheese. So and when I had American friends, coming over and I do that, they said, "What's going on here?" I'm like, "Sorry, that's the way I do it." So.
People don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we were in a different context, obviously, and everything were like open, and we do a tour in San Francisco, you and I, where would you take me if you have like 5 food location? It doesn't have to be a restaurant. It could be a store. It could be, interesting food place to try something good. Where would you take me?
I would definitely do Swan Oyster Depot. I would do there's this really, really interesting new market my wife introduced me to. She found it. She's been going to it for a while, but it's called the Parkside. It's such like this mix. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. Tatiana, how would you explain that market? It's like the Parkside Market. It's like Armenian and Russian Mediterranean specialties with the parenthesis air quotes when you say that. But it's got like, you can go in there, but then you've got stuff like you've got Russian back fat that's been cured in salt next to this crazy blood sausage thing in the case.
Wow.
Then you've got all these dried fish, frozen Eastern European dumplings, killer cheeses, stuff like a lot of smoked fish. And then
where is it? Where is it in San Francisco? In which area?
Like a couple blocks from my house.
Okay.
Out in what neighborhood would you call that? Inner Sunset, West Portal area.
Okay.
I would probably go do coffee over at. I can't even get the words out of my brain is shot today.
Yeah, it says Middle Eastern Specialties.
Middle Eastern Specialties. She said it says in the shot.
Okay,
but it's crazy because I got a piece of bread. I got one of those like crazy flatbreads.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was like 3.5 feet long.
Oh wow! Wow!
It was like this incredibly big lavash that was incredible. It had like za'atar. It was killer, and they get pita fresh every single day there. I mean, it's incredible. And then I'd probably go to do coffee over at like Andy Town, which is in the outer Sunset. And then I'd go to Kim Alter's place and get
sure,
whatever
Nightbird.
At Nightbird, yeah.
I had her on the show. She's very nice. I like her a lot.
She's like so talented, and her food is very thoughtful and very, it's not overthought. It's very smart, and it just makes so much sense. It's like you have these complete juxtapose of things, and I think that's what's so great about San Francisco. It's like I can go to Swan Oyster Depot and get the best oysters and shellfish and like crab with, the getting brown meat sauce and then go to this dumpling spot down the street from my house. What is that place called? The Szechuan Dumpling House, the one? No, the dumpling house where they make the dumplings in front of you, the one that we went to that day. Yuan Bao Zhaoji. And
wow.
They make dumplings like, it's so good. But it's like, and you can jump from that to like Parkside Market, which has all these like so much influence from all over the world, and then go to somebody like Kim and have, such a beautiful, thoughtful meal. And then, and then from there, you can just jump over and go get a bowl of pho at Yummy Yummy. It's just like that's what I love about this city, is that there is such a unique balance.
Yeah. You can find that a little bit as well in Houston, and then, like the place where you have Rosalie as well. That's so eclectic and so
Houston's
much
so much going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm learning every time I go to Houston. There's so much to see there. I mean, it's different. Like you go to Portland and it's like I go to Eam, and then I go to Hot Yai, and then I go to Lardo, and then I go to Nostrana for Italian pasta. I mean, it's just like so many cool different things there. Such good food. Yeah, and then of course there's like Canard and the Pigeon,
sure.
Which is always like, it's like I can't. It's hard, It's like it's so tough to like pick cities and
Chef, that we have been talking almost like an hour and a half. I cannot believe it. I really thank you, but thank you so much for your time. And I really was excited to have you on the show. And I hope, and all the best, for you and your business, in restaurants for the future. What's going to be whatever the new norm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, to be cranky about some things, but like right now, it's just we don't have the answers, and we're all we're all in a really ugly place right now, and it's become a situation where we're getting asked the same question, I would say probably about 10, 15 times a day.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
And people are trying to get us to come up with these like mystical answers. Like I'm looking in this ball to tell everybody what to do. And I wish I could. And it's just, we're stuck. Like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like I just want to open a pot and all of a sudden like a genie come out and be like, okay, fix it. Do us all a favor. We don't know what to do. It's tough. And, we sit on these calls all day and talk to each other and to politicians and Congress people to still not come up with a sound answer every day. It's just, it's starting to beat on people pretty hard.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to, to start the discussion with, of course, that's the hot topic at the moment. And
of course it is.
Just to have your thoughts. I could not, ignore this and ask you to talk about your restaurants. And so to give a little bit of
they're all
context,
closed, so there's nothing really much to talk about them.
Thank you so much. We have to excite the next generation of chefs to love their craft. We are here to make people happy. I love those words from Chef Cosentino and what he said about the industry. I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you did, please share this episode or the podcast Flavors Unknown with a friend. It will take you only 2 minutes and it will help a lot, as word of mouth is the best way to add more listeners to the show. You can find the show notes of this episode or all the other episodes on the website flavorsunknown.com. Please follow us as well on Instagram and Facebook at Flavors Unknown. Next episode will be a very special one. I am a member of the CMO Club. It's the Chief Marketing Officer Club. And I was supposed to be at their South by Southwest Clubhouse in March. And obviously, it did not happen. And I was supposed to have a live conversation with my friend, Chef Andre Natera from the Fairmont in Austin. And it was supposed to be about leadership and what every CMOs can learn from top chefs. So Chef Andre Natera and we recorded this conversation, and you will be able to listen to it on the next episode. I see you in 2 weeks, and until then, remember that people who love to eat are always the best people.
You've just enjoyed another delicious episode of Flavors Unknown. Hungry for more? Hit subscribe. Tell us where you're listening from by leaving a review. And for social media and show notes, head to flavorsunknown.com.